The Shameless Picture Show is part of the Cinepunks Network. If you like The Shameless Picture Show and you want to hear other great shows like it, make sure you check out the Cinepunks Network. You can find them at www.cinepunks.com. That's CINEPUNX. There's other great shows such as Cinepunks. There's The Carnage Report, Cinema Smorgasbord, Fat Girl Hacks, Loud, Fast, Philly, Tomb of Ideas, and Twitch of the Death Nerve, and so much more. If you like punk rock and you like movies, make sure to go to www.cinepunks.com. And let's not forget the sponsors for the Cinepunks Network. We have the Lehigh Valley Apparel Creations. They are the premier screen printer of the Lehigh Valley with service to the whole country, professional and personable in a way that only a DIY business can be. They also have ridiculously low prices for whatever your screen printing needs may be. You can visit them online at xlvacx.com. That's xlvacx.com. Lehigh Valley Apparel Creations. We also have the Essex Coffee Roasters. All their coffee is roasted to order. They have high quality beans, bunch of apparel, and tea available. They are bringing high quality coffee to the masses without the pretentiousness. Use the code CINEPUNKS for 10% off your first order. You can visit them at www.essexcoffeeroasters.com. That's ESSEX, coffeeroasters.com. Once again, use the code CINEPUNKS for 10% off your first order. This episode is also brought to you by Paramount Pictures. Paramount Pictures is a legendary producer and global distributor of filmed entertainment since 1912. Paramount Pictures' library consists of more than 1,000 film titles with rights to an additional 2,500, featuring films by Hollywood's most respected filmmakers, including Martin Scorsese, J.J. Abrams, and Michael Bay, among others. Paramount Pictures' library consists of more than 1,000 films, including such classics as Star Trek, Godfather, and Indiana Jones franchises, Academy Award winners Braveheart, Forrest Gump, and Titanic, and current favorites such as the Mission Impossible and Transformers franchises. Paramount Pictures distributes its titles on DVD and Blu-ray through Paramount Home Entertainment. We are happy to have them. We fucking love Paramount Pictures.
This movie podcast actually discusses movies. Be aware that it may discuss any of the following elements: endings, surprise twists, unexpected cameos, and all manner of spoilers. If this doesn't appeal to you, why listen to a movie podcast? Without further ado, please enjoy our feature presentation, The Shameless Picture Show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Shameless Picture Show. I am your host, Michael Viers, and today I'm being joined by a friend of mine, a filmmaker, and a fellow member of the Troma team, Joe Randazzo. How you doing, Joe?
Hey, Michael. Good to be here. And it was actually after we met that I learned that you had done some editing for Troma. I'm still friends with Lloyd to this day. We still text each other pretty regularly. Sometimes he'll just get a random text going, "Hey, check out this movie," which is like super cool. From there, meeting Justin Martell, who was his personal assistant like a decade ago. I'm now working with him on The Last Drive-In.
Yep.
So,
Justin was his assistant, or was just finished being his assistant when I met Lloyd. And then, why am I blanking on his name? The composer for The Last Drive-In. What's his name?
John Brennan.
John was his assistant when I first got in with him. So yeah, I know those guys as well. I remember actually pitching in money for Martell's project Megafoot that never got off the ground. I still have 2 t-shirts for that.
Yeah, it's such a great idea that I'm shocked it never actually got off the ground.
I keep hoping that one day it'll have its resurgence. But yeah, it was funny. Like, it was funny learning how many people locally are connected to Troma. And I don't talk to Lloyd as much as you do, mostly because I just feel like I don't want to ever feel like I'm bothering him. But he always texts. He'll text me randomly all the time. He'll always text me my birthday. I'm always surprised that he remembers my birthday, because I was very worried when I first started working with him, because like I was an out of state editor. I was one of the few they ever did that with, because Lloyd liked me. So they would send me hard drives. So it didn't, it was not necessarily a cheap process to have me as an editor at the time. And so I had met Lloyd at Cannes, of all places. And when I went to New York to Troma Dance, I was like, there's no way he's gonna know me by name, but there's no way he's gonna remember what I look like. And he did.
No,
every time I see him, he remembers me. He remembers my wife's name, which I always impressed by.
Yeah. He's very good like that. He will meet you and have some kind of connection with you, and then 5 years later you think he's forgotten you, and you'll run into him and he will remember you, will remember the name of your wife or significant other and all that stuff. He remembers your birthday. Yeah. So yeah,
he was supposed to come to my wedding.
Oh,
I invited him, and he RSVP'd, yes. But then a event came up in Cuba, I want to say, and he's like, he pretty much told me, it's like, I'd love to come, but money's money.
Yeah, I got to work.
Yeah, so but then he did send me a very nice care package where I think they just went through the Troma storeroom and sent me a bunch of stuff. But my favorite thing is he sent me as a wedding present. Everything was signed, which I loved. But he sent me an animation still from Toxic Crusaders.
Oh, that is so cool. Yeah, he's like that. Like if I'm in New York, let's grab lunch. I grew up in New York, so I go out there and I visit my nephew in Jersey, and he always extends the invitation. Come up to the studio. Let's grab lunch. Let's do something. Mm-hmm. So I love that about him. So yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, and actually, after Cannes, he came. I told him, it's like, hey, if you're ever in the Illinois or Chicago area, let me know and we'll get lunch or whatever. And he took me up on it. And it was around this time that I was trying to get work with Troma as an editor. It was before I actually got the job. And I had applied, and they'd sent me a very nice email back saying, we don't work with people who are out of state just because it's not feasible for us. I'm like, okay, that's fair. Went to go have lunch with Lloyd, and I had it in my mind that I was going to treat him to lunch.
He won't let you.
No, he won't let me.
He will not allow you to treat him to lunch.
No,
I've tried. He does not allow it.
No, and like there was a bunch of other filmmakers there at the time. Not a bunch, but a decent smattering, because he was doing an event at the Music Box. And afterwards, we were wrapping up and everything. He came up to me and just put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, "Michael, why aren't you editing for me?" Because he knew I was an editor. And I was like, because I was like, because your guys told me no. He's like, they did. Email me tomorrow.
That's how he is.
Yep.
That's how he is. I remember when I moved from LA to Chicago, I didn't tell him that I moved. And God, I'm trying to remember. I think it was his co-writer on Produce Your Own Damn Movie. Text me, and she's like, "Hey, Lloyd asked me to have you come to this event. He wants you to meet James Gunn." And I'm like, "Well, where is it?" She's like, "Oh, it's at the God, what was it? The New Art Theater, I think, is where they'd run in Beverly Hills all the time." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "I just moved to Chicago like last week." So, but yeah, he's like that. I'll be like, "Oh yeah, now he knows I'm in Chicago. So now whenever he does anything in Chicago, he'll ask what I'm doing if I'm busy." But he hasn't been here in a little while now.
Yeah, and not that he comes to Milwaukee that much, but whenever he does, he always hits up Katie and hits up me just to. But sadly, last time he came, which is probably the last time we hung out, which is like what, 2022.
Yeah, because we missed each other at Twisted Dreams this last year.
Yeah, we did.
Because I could only go the one day.
When we were working Lloyd's table, and unfortunately, he was so busy that week. I was gonna see if he wanted to get a bite to eat somewhere or something, but he had no time.
Yeah, he had no time that entire weekend. I walked him to his hotel room because he was down the hall from me, but
Yeah.
that's the extent of what how much time I got to spend with Lloyd that weekend.
So how did you get connected with Troma? Since I like to whenever I have a new guest in the show, I like to dedicate this beginning part to the exploits of my guest, what they're about, what they do, and then we'll transition to the movies. Tell me a little bit about how you got connected with Troma and your own filmmaking career. Just tell me a little bit about you, Joe. Tell the
Well,
listeners about you.
well, I man, let
I
me
know
back
I
this up.
threw
I
you
had
a
been
curveball.
2009. I'd written a screenplay that was doing pretty well on the festival circuit, like 2009, 2010.
Okay.
And actually, we could transition this even into Roger Corman because I'm an idiot, and I can tell you the biggest regret of my entire life right at this moment. This is after I'd already met Lloyd. Lloyd, I wanted Lloyd to play a part in the film, and my friend Ashley Wren Collins had co-written his book, Produce Your Own Damn Movie. So she got me in touch with Lloyd, and that script never got made. And I'll get more on that in a minute because we could talk about the great Roger Corman in a minute on that. But we from there, I wanted him in this film, but I'd been talking, and that's how I met Justin Martell. Was being given Lloyd's office number, and Ashley tell me this. So we booked him for two of Dave Campfield's films, and we
Okay.
shot his scenes in both movies in the same day in the same place in Long Island. But we were he invited us out into Manhattan. We went to a book signing that he was doing. He was giving a speech, so Dave and I hung out, and he took us to dinner that night and bought us dinner. He did Caesar Renato Meet Dracula's Lawyer, a short that we were doing. We were experimenting with green screen, and
Mm-hmm.
he did that. And he played a judge who was kind of lecherous towards the very attractive female lawyer played by Ashley Wren Collins, and we shot his scene for Caesar Renato's Deadly Xmas, where he plays Dave Campfield's grandfather, and we do a parody of the scene of the little boy seeing his grandfather in Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Lloyd, we just let him ad
Perfect.
lib, and he was perfect. And
Perfect.
actually, that's how we met. We kind of struck up a friendship, and often he and I would go back and forth on things. Anytime he's doing C2E2 in Chicago, I would go. And I'd volunteer for him for the weekend. And the Roger Corman thing, rest in peace, Roger Corman. He just died like almost 2 weeks ago. Uh, 2010 at a film festival in Louisville, Kentucky. Roger Corman was receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award, and my script won Best Screenplay.
Mm.
I gave a speech, and Roger walked up to me afterwards, shook my hand, and I told him, my God, man, my father and I watch the Vincent Price movies, your Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price movies religiously. Like we love those movies. And Roger told me, why don't you send, this screenplay, why don't you send it to my office on Monday, and we'll see if anything can come of it. I fucking chickened out and didn't do it.
You chickened out and didn't
And
do
didn't
it.
do it. And who knows what my career might be now versus what it is today had I actually took him up on that and actually sent it.
I think that's a lesson for everyone out there
Yes, take
listening
that fucking
is
shot, dude. What
shoot
was
your
it?
shot.
What was literally the guy who brought Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, uh, Jack Nicholson, all these people into filmmaking was like, hey, send the script. And I was like, oh my God. And I chickened out and didn't send it. What the fuck was I going to lose?
Yeah. I
What was I going to lose if I sent him and he went, it's not my thing. Maybe I just didn't want to hear that it wasn't his thing. Maybe
that
subconsciously
could
that
be
was
it.
it, but I never did it.
That could be it. And
And
sometimes you pass up on those things. Like I had a situation. and I'm sure he'd still do it if I asked him to. But now it's too much time has passed. Right after the Cannes Film Festival, when I met Lloyd, he saw my short and he wanted to purchase it from me and put it on Troma Now before it had become a thing. He was planning for the future, and I was worried about someone else having it and like not being able to show it how I wanted to. So I told him no. Granted, he wasn't going to pay me much, but he wanted it.
Yeah,
and I'm sure if I'd ask him, he'd probably do it. But it's an old film at this point. I don't care that much. But
he has two of my films up that were made in 2010 and 2012, so he's still I get a residual check every year around November, and it's not much, but it's something.
It's something. Buy you a coffee or something.
That's literally all this will buy.
But no, you're
$5, which is more than I ever got from Tubi. So
yeah, it's something. Your Lloyd Kaufman story reminds me of my Herschel Gordon Lewis story. I think I've told this on the show before, but it was around the time that I just started this podcast, and Herschel Gordon Lewis is a hero of mine, like many horror fans who wanted to get into low budget films. And he had kind of just been off the radar for a while. And this is before he had passed away. And he had been off the radar for quite a while, hadn't really been making many public appearances. And I found the website for his like ad agency or his marketing company that he was running. And I shot him an email out of the blue, just being like, I'm a big fan. We actually, I went to UWM, which was more of an experimental art film school. I told him that his films were actually being shown at UWM, and were being praised by that audience, which I thought he'd find.
He'd definitely get a kick out of that.
Yeah, if anything, get a kick out of it. And then I just said, I would love to. You mean a lot to me. I would love to get your autograph. And being the true salesperson he was, if you send me $40 and a self-addressed envelope, I will mail it out to you. But I was so broke at the time. I was like, I could give you $40 or I could buy groceries. And then he died like maybe 2 weeks later. Or maybe closer to a month, but it was very close.
He was cool he probably would have done your podcast had you started it by then. He did an interview with me via email, actually. So I wasn't set up to do any kind of phone thing. This is like in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the technology wasn't really there for a podcast, but we did the email. We emailed back and forth and did I emailed him the questions and he responded and sent them back, and they were published on a website that no longer exists. I wonder if I have it in my archive somewhere.
I would love to read that if you do, but I've learned from from so many experiences that I just reach out and ask, and most they'll do is say no or ask me for a fee that I can't pay. Like I had an opportunity to get George Stephen Jr. on this podcast, and it still might happen. I've been reaching out to Vincent Price's daughter. I've never gotten back, but one of these days she might reply. Just like it all goes back to your story of Roger Corman. You just got to shoot your shot.
Yeah. I mean, what do you really have to lose? I mean, that there's a few filmmakers that I've tried to interview, and I'll send an email, and who knows if that email is even good anymore, and no response ever comes. It is what it is. You have to take a chance.
Yeah, exactly. Because you never know. All right, Joe. So before we move on to our topic today, is there anything that you're working on that you want to tell people about?
Right now, nothing. I have a lot of ideas, but I haven't really put pen to paper in a little while, so we'll see if something comes out of it. I don't like talking about projects before I get them off the ground because I learned that's the worst thing you could do.
Understandable.
Yeah, then everyone's asking where this project is, and it never comes. I at least want to have a screenplay done before I talk about it.
Hey, I completely understand it, and if you ever need someone to bounce ideas off of, you know how to get a hold of me.
We've actually discussed that in the past, and it's just
We
life got
have,
in
and
the
it just
way.
hasn't. Our schedules haven't aligned. There was one time when we were supposed to meet up in Chicago, but I think me and my wife got really ill, and I think we had COVID.
Yeah, it
So
was.
we had to reschedule it, and we haven't rescheduled it yet.
We have never rescheduled it, but
It'll
it's
happen.
always open to me too, man. Reach out if there's anything that I could do to help somebody. I'm always down to help friends out. But as far as my own projects, it's like I told somebody else recently because she was like, "Do you think if I reach out to this person with this idea?" I was like, "Don't reach out to anybody with an idea. Reach out to them with something tangible. With,
Hmm.
hey, I wrote this script." Then you approach the producer. You don't approach the producer with, "I have an idea for a script,"
Nope.
because yeah, everybody has an idea.
Yep.
Everybody has an idea for the multi-million-dollar next billion-dollar movie, but nobody has a screenplay. When you have a screenplay, then go talk to people.
Exactly. And that's usually my rule as well. I'll tell my close friends about ideas that I'm working on, but I don't try to get it going until there's a
Yeah,
script.
because I mean, there's no point, because if you try to approach Lloyd Kaufman with, "I have an idea for a movie," yeah, so did 75 other people in his life.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have a script you could show him that he can read and he could say, "Okay, we could get behind this,"
Yep.
because then you have something.
Yeah. One of these days, I need to send him one of the finished scripts I wrote. But I think I'm very much like you. I think there's a part of me that's afraid.
I mean, one thing I stress this with everybody. Um, when you write a screenplay, if you're my friend, the worst thing you could do is tell me everything's right, because I know everything isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing we do need to do is we need to let go of the fear of what if they don't like it. The best thing that can happen is they come back to you with notes. And what I like to do, like if let's say I sent you my screenplay today and I said, "Hey Michael, can you read this? Can you get back to me?" The last thing that I want you to do, if you're sending me your script, is tell me what it's about, tell me what I'm supposed to see, tell me what I'm supposed to feel. Because if I already know that going in, I'm going to be looking for that. I'm going to be looking for where you put that together, and I don't want to do that. If I send you a script and you tell me this doesn't make sense, then I know I need to fix that. And I
Yep.
can't tell you what it is. I can't tell you what it is that I was going for, because the person, if I send this to a studio, if I send this to an agent, the person reading it isn't going to ask me, "What were you going for with this?" They're just going to throw it in the trash.
Yeah, they're just gonna they have what's on the paper, and
Yeah.
that's it.
And if I send you a script and you don't understand something, then I want you to tell me you don't understand that. I want you to tell me, "This part right here doesn't make any sense to me." But what I don't want is for you to tell me, "Explain it to me." I want to go back and work on it and get it
Mm-hmm.
to a place where you can read it next time and you go, that's what he meant by that. Because if I tell you, then how do I know I really accomplished what I was trying to accomplish?
Exactly.
Unless you're writing it with me. If you're a co-writer, then yeah, then we talk about it, because then you might have an idea of how I can improve it. But the last thing I ever want is for me to send you something and hear back, "Oh, it's great. Oh, it's excellent. Oh, I have no notes." Dude, it's only the first draft. There's no way it's great. There's no way it's excellent. There's no way there's no notes.
No, exactly, and it's actually the same way I feel about film criticism. I don't like to read the stuff before I've seen a movie,
Yeah.
which is counterproductive to a lot of why the job of a film critic once existed, was to tell people whether or not they should see something. But I like to watch the movie and then go like, oh, read like a classic review by Roger Ebert or something, like, oh shit, I didn't even think of this. I didn't even notice this. And I like to think about that stuff after the fact.
Well, with the review, I find them a little bit different, because because with a review, what I basically want to know is it worth my time?
Yes.
I'm probably going to watch it anyway, but
Yeah.
but is it worth my time? For other things, like I'm not going to read like a really deep dive essay into a movie before I read it.
Yeah.
Because that I feel is just counterproductive. Because then, like with what I was just saying with the screenplay, I'm going to look for this this part that Martin Scorsese says is truly iconic in this movie. And I'm not Martin Scorsese. I shouldn't be viewing it through the same lens as him. I should be forming my own opinion. And then I could go back and read what Martin thinks was going on in this scene in this classic movie. You know?
Completely agree. And speaking of Martin Scorsese, we are about to talk about one of his all-time favorite movies. After hemming and hawing a little bit of which film we would talk about, Joe and I have decided to scratch something off of both of our respective shame lists. Our selection today also happens to be Martin Scorsese's all-time favorite picture, John Ford's Searchers. The year is 1868. Ethan Edwards has been away fighting for the Confederacy. Once home, he doesn't get much time to settle back into his life as he's enlisted by a local Texas Ranger to help recover some stolen cattle. The situation sours once signs point to the cattle having been stolen by the Comanche, but it's all a ruse to lead everyone away from the local homesteads. Ethan is greeted by fire and bloodshed when he returns to the family homestead. No one was left behind, and Ethan's two nieces, Lucy and Debbie, have been kidnapped. This sends Ethan and his adopted nephew Martin, who has native blood in his veins, on a destructive mission of revenge. Despite mixed reviews at the time of release, John Ford's The Searchers would go on to become recognized as one of the finest American films of all time, and possibly one of the greatest of all time, topping lists such as AFI, Cahiers du Cinema, Sight and Sound, and others. The film would also become a huge influence on cinema as a whole, inspiring such films as Taxi Driver, Star Wars, and even the TV show Breaking Bad. While its influence may not be felt as strongly today by film fans, the film is still praised for its gritty, tough performance from John Wayne, its beautiful VistaVision / Eastman color cinematography, and John Ford's incredible direction and staging. The Searcher stars John Wayne, Jeffrey Hunter, Vera Miles, Ward Bond, Ken Curtis, and Natalie Wood. It was written by Frank S. Nugent, based on a novel by the same name, written by Alan LeMay, and the film was shot by Winton C. Houck, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Music by Max Steiner from 1956, directed by John Ford. This is The Searchers.
From the thrilling pages of life rides a man you must fear and respect. A man whose unconquerable will and boundless determination carved a lusty, rough, and boisterous slice of history called The Searchers. It's John Wayne as Ethan Edwards, who had a rare kind of courage. The courage that simply keeps on and on, far beyond all reasonable endurance, never thinking of himself as martyred, never thinking of himself as brave.
So we'll find him in the end, I promise you. We'll find him.
Here is the story of a man, hard and relentless, tender and passionate, of people who dared to challenge a hostile land. Here is drama of great love and aching loneliness.
I found him. I found Lucy. What you saw was a buck wearing Lucy's dress. I found Lucy back in the canyon. What was she? What do you want me to do? Draw you a picture? Spell it out? Don't ever ask me. As long as you live, don't ever ask me more.
And if you don't hear my first holler, you better read my mind, because I don't aim to raise no two hollers on any subject at hand.
Yes, sir.
Boy, watch that knife.
Go, Martin, please.
Stand aside, Martin.
No, you don't, Ethan. Ethan, no, you don't!
Stand aside. Looks like you got yourself surrounded.
Yeah, and I figure on getting myself unsurrounded. Let's go!
So The Searchers. This is the first time for both of us. Let's just start with basic. What did you think of The Searchers?
Well, I mean, there's certain parts that didn't age well. I mean, this is a nearly 70-year-old movie, so there's going to be things in there that we're, not necessarily going to agree with. But it's funny because when I think about it now, 24 hours removed from having watched it, I think part of the things that we were uncomfortable with were probably meant to be uncomfortable even 70 years ago. Mm-hmm. John Wayne is, Ethan in this film he's not just a straight up hero. He's very much an anti-hero. Yeah. And there are moments in this film, oh my God, where he, the line of dialogue, God, I want to get it right, where he says they're no longer white, they're Comanche. Yeah. And there's this, you see him walking out and turning, and there's just this slow zoom into John Wayne's face, and like his eyes are just completely shrouded in darkness. You just see like just the bottom half of his face as he's glaring back at this woman who's crying. And you just see like just the lust for revenge has taken the humanity out of this man.
Yes.
And a lot of the overt racism that Ethan has in the film, I think it was actually the point was for us to look at this guy and think, not to bond with him on that, but just kind of see how being driven by revenge could turn someone almost into a monster.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting because so I grew up with John Wayne as a figure in my life. And I should also start by saying I did like the film, but some of those overtly racist elements, because the Western genre has a lot of overt racism anyways, but not put so plainly as it is with John Wayne's character in this movie. And I grew up with John Wayne. My dad was born in the South, so John Wayne was kind of a hero. Both my parents are just of that age where John Wayne was always on the TV for them, so he's always on the TV for me. And despite all that, I had missed this movie. And the John Wayne that I grew up with was the heroic John Wayne. It was the almost squeaky clean John Wayne, where he was a little gruff and would start a fist fight just because that was his type of character, but he wasn't vile. So to see this version of him, which is so against type, but also against type of the type of person he played, maybe not necessarily against type for the person that he was. Yeah, it's interesting, and I do believe from the stuff that I've been reading, John Ford made that character that way intentionally. This was not just casual racism. This was drawing attention to the fact of how vile he was. Like, I remember that scene when they first launched their initial party to go search for the two girls, and they uncover that native corpse underneath the rock. Yeah. And, John Wayne shoots him in both eyes after he's already dead. And even the casually racist cowboys are like, okay, you're going a little far, bro. And he has this whole thing about now, he's going to be wandering the afterlife. So he hates them so much. He wants even their afterlife to fucking suck. Well, and it made me uncomfortable, but in the same way that something like Taxi Driver did, where like I'm fascinated and I can't stop watching this person.
Well, it's kind of, and we might be dating ourselves here. After 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
you would hear the casual racism about Muslims, and oh yeah, you know what we should do? We should bury them wrong and stuff pork in them, so that even in the afterlife they're screwed. And that's what this was. This is that kind of garbage that you would hear back then in like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it still exists to this day.
Yep.
That's the interest. That's the interesting thing about this movie, and also timely considering what's going on in the world as we're recording this. Is you have an attack on a home. You have a couple of characters abducted in that attack, and then you have a retaliation that at first seems like it's, kind of justified because this and this happened, but then you see how somebody can take it too far,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it's making even the people who would be on your side uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it is kind of timely in that respect to watch this kind of movie happen. And in your messages to me when we were discussing how we were going to watch this, you mentioned the Thrill House moment,
Mm-hmm.
and for me that would be, and for a movie that has so many, like, the violence is never overt on screen.
No.
But the movie itself is so dark that there are moments in it that even though you don't see the violence, you can kind of feel how a character feels in the moment. And for me, the Thrill House moment, the moment where like I got like locked in, is early on, right before the attack on the home. Debbie goes out back. Her mom tries to get her away from the house because she knows the house is going to be attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And her dog comes out, and because she's trying to shoo the dog away, that Scar figures out where she is. And the image of Debbie, sitting there by a gravestone, I think.
Yeah.
As a shadow comes over her, and there's Henry Brandon as Scar, looking down on her, and just the terror in Debbie. That was the moment that I was like, oh my God, yeah, this is that's the moment that that probably truly locked me in. Because everything about that moment, the terror in Lana Wood's eyes, looking up and you're seeing, the very, very chiseled physique of Henry Brandon kind of standing over her, looking down on her, and just this beautiful landscape behind them of Monument Valley, which, I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit. That scene, like, I could picture it right now in my head 24 hours after the fact. Like, that's the moment. That's the moment for me that, like, I knew this was going to be, it was a buckle up moment. It was okay. This is where things are going to change. It's relatively early into the movie, like probably like 10, 15 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
Maybe a little longer than that.
And mine, funny enough, was actually very close to that. It was about a scene or two later. It was when Ethan gets back to the homestead and you see it burning, and then I had that moment. I was like, oh shit, George Lucas took, that's where he got that Tatooine scene from, which is still the most unsettling scene that I've seen in any of the Star Wars movies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that scene where he finds his brother's sister's body, like one, and then you tapped on it perfectly. We never see the violence. Toby Hooper would do that years later with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it felt like a very violent movie, but we're not seeing anything. And this movie has that effect in a lot of ways. But he sees her body, and then when Martin tries to go, he's like doing everything. He's like, "Don't let him in there."
Yeah.
And they're having to get Martin from going in there. He actually punches him. And that was my lock-in moment, because up until that point, we hadn't, like, John Wayne pretty much from the first scene, you're like, oh, I don't like this version of John Wayne. You know, he comes up when he first rides in from this from the horizon, and he gets off his horse, and he doesn't say a word to anyone. He just kind of addresses them all, and you don't see the slightly more jovial John Wayne that we're used to until the very next scene when he's in the house. But from the very beginning, and it's like, I don't like him. And they're really stressing at the beginning that he is a piece of shit.
Yeah, you're not supposed to like him.
Yeah, the comments he makes towards Martin, and the thing, and it's not even the things he says, the way that he looks at him when he first walks in the house. I'm like, oh shit, there's tension here. And my wife was like, why is he just staring at him? And then he makes the comments he does. But that was my lock-in moment, because even though they have done so much in such a short period of time to really drive home the fact that John Wayne's character is not a good person, and he does not like Martin, but he still doesn't want him to see that.
He says it's not going to do you any good to see it. That's what he tells him after he hits him.
Yeah, and it's like, here's a man who has seen a lot fighting in the war, and on the losing end of the war as well. So he saw even more bloodshed, and he clearly has PTSD before anyone really knew what that was. So like, to see that duality, I'm like, oh, I still don't like him, but he does have his own moral code. It's just a flawed moral code.
I'm curious about your relationship with the Searchers, because mine changed, and I saw it when I was young, college, maybe even a little before college, made no impression. Then when I saw it again, probably only for the second time, soon after I got to TCM, and I had a really difficult time with it. And I thought, I don't know why people love this movie. This character is awful, right? Martin Scorsese calls John Wayne's character in The Searchers, Ethan Edwards, perhaps the most unsettling character in American cinema.
Yeah, he's damaged goods.
He's very... And then, whatever it is, 10 years ago, I start to get it, and now I adore it. It has come completely full circle.
Yeah, it's not a simple character, and it's probably, along with Red River, one of his two best performances. And it's because of that darkness in both characters. And I think that was an untapped side of John Wayne. The film itself, though, is more generous about humanity, and the fact that it's shot in VistaVision, which was a larger format negative. The picture is wonderful quality, and it's meant to be seen on a large screen, but on a good home screen, it looks as good as any image today because it was shot that way. It feels
by Winton Hoke, we should mention, the DP who
knew his stuff,
knew what he was doing with a John Ford picture.
Yeah, it had an amazing cast besides John Wayne and Jeffrey Hunter. It had Natalie Wood in it and Ward Bond, who'd been in a million movies, and Vera Miles, and it's an epic film that still feels epic.
But you talk about scenes that were the very opening scene where the door opens and we look out into outside the door of the house into Monument Valley. Mm-hmm. That scene's been done a million times since.
Oh yeah, and I love the way that John Ford uses doorways in a lot of his films.
Yeah.
And just that use of negative space, I just think is absolutely gorgeous. And when we can transition into our discussion on Monument Valley, but no one shoots Monument Valley like John Ford and his team.
No, nobody ever does. But I was also going to say, the way he shoots a film would never work on an indoor film. It has to be outdoors in this and it can never be in a city. I can't think of this style of this style of shooting working if his movies were set in New York City. I think you need to be out in an area like Monument Valley.
Yeah.
Which is just naturally just so beautiful.
Yeah, I think the closest you can get to a city is something like a small town in one.
Yeah,
like the way he shoots My Darling Clementine, which is probably one of my favorite pictures of his. He manages to still have this epic feeling without some of his trademarks.
Yeah, and for Stagecoach also is another one. The way
Love
all that is shot.
I really admire Stagecoach because, for one thing, it was John Ford's first foray into Monument Valley. So he was starting to use landscape art to help tell his story, to create God's country, and to put little figures in a grand landscape. And he began to bring nature into his films. And more than any of his silent movies, this was where he really began to use nature as a character in his pictures. And I also like when the guy has the Bible open, the arrow goes through the book into his heart. That's pretty cool.
Even to the point of the parody in the Fabelmans, that was always that was always the John Ford thing. When you think of a John Ford movie, you think of these gorgeous landscape shots, and I don't think people have tried. Obviously, George Lucas obviously did, and there's some great Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings. And actually, I was thinking of Quentin Tarantino with Inglourious Bastards with that door opening and just everything outside. And it was done in something more recent too, and I just cannot for the life of me remember what it was at the moment. It's just been done a million times since then, and we're kind of seeing the origin of it here.
Yeah, and it's still done so well. And one thing that I love about this film is, and I think something that you see a lot of, anytime you see like a young filmmaker and they are shooting something, when the first time a filmmaker gets lenses, everything is shot with very shallow, deep of focus because that looks cinematic. I watch these old films and think the really deep focus to me just screams cinema. And this film had such deep focus to it that the images almost looked three-dimensional at times.
Yeah. Especially as you just look at just mountain ranges going as far back as the lens could see. Mm-hmm. It's so amazing to look at. Yeah, it does look almost three-dimensional at times.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because John Ford notoriously was a very buttoned up person. He didn't view himself as an artist. This was just his job. If you ever get a chance, I don't know if you're into podcasts or not, but before he passed away, Peter Bogdanovich was doing a series of podcasts. It was called One Handshake Away, where he would get a contemporary filmmaker and have them listen to the interviews he did with older filmmakers, and they would talk about it. And he did an episode on John Ford where he was talking about John Ford with documentarian Ken Burns.
That'd be a great conversation.
It was a great conversation. And they're talking about one of Ford's early silent pictures and this incredible scene, this incredible like battle scene that he did, hundreds of extras, all these horses, all this chaotic energy. And like I said, it was back during the silent film time. So he was doing things that we take for granted now, but hadn't really been done. And Bogdanovich is just trying to get answers out of this man, and he is not having it.
11, take one.
Take one. More than one take, Roy. Shoot.
Mr. Ford, you made a picture called Three Bad Men, which was a large-scale Western. You had a quite elaborate land rush in it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you shoot that?
With a camera.
He doesn't see the artistic credit of what he's doing. He doesn't view things in that way. And I think that's why, as I discover more and more of his films feel very unpretentious.
Like you said, he just saw film as a job. He was, notoriously, he liked talking more about fighting for his country than anything else. Like for him, film was just, this is how I make my money. But when anybody talked about, when he talked about anything he was proud of all his accomplishments in the military, which I don't know if it was, I think it was World War One. Was it?
World War One, I believe, is when he fought it, and then he was a documentarian in World War Two.
Yeah, so that's what he's most proud of. Like it's funny that we're sitting here lauding his achievements, and he would look at us and be like, "What are you two fucking idiots talking about?"
Yeah, yeah.
Bogdanovich actually does the audio commentary on the DVD of The Searchers that I own, so I might go back and listen to it, watch it with his audio commentary on it.
No, I would definitely love to do that. And like, so you kind of touched on this about how there's shots from this movie that have stuck with you 24 hours later. And when I watched this movie, I also watched it yesterday. I had kind of a mixed reaction to it. It wasn't dislike, but it's jarring. You go in with a certain idea of who John Wayne is. Even in Stagecoach, where he's playing a criminal, he's the nicest criminal ever.
Yeah.
He just seems like a really swell guy. And like, I have seen more quote unquote contemporary westerns with an older John Wayne, like Big Jake, or films like that where he
True
is
Grit.
Yeah, True Grit, where he is a little bit more gruff, but he's still that heroic John Wayne. So to see this version of him, and to probably see and kind of be staring into his soul, knowing what John Wayne was like, and his very poor opinion about Native people, and probably pretty much anyone of color.
Oh yeah.
It made me uncomfortable, but in a good way, almost the way I keep going back to Taxi Driver, and the way that movie made me uncomfortable. I didn't know how I felt about that movie the first time I watched it, but then I couldn't get it out of my mind. And that's how I'm with The Searchers, where I was like, oh, I liked The Searchers, but I didn't love it. But then all day today, I've just been thinking about the movie and Googling things about it and just trying to understand it more. And I'm very much like you. It's like, I want to go back and rewatch it already.
Yeah, and this is one of those movies that I am going to go back and rewatch because, yeah, there are things in it that, but again, I think it's intentional. I think it's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable that John Wayne is the hero, but he's also very much this racist. My roommate and I were talking about the French Connection and Popeye Doyle.
Mm-hmm.
Popeye Doyle is an overt racist, but
Yeah.
still very much, the quote unquote hero of the French Connection. And yeah, you mentioned John Wayne's possible dislike of people of color in general. A couple years ago, there was that interview that surfaced from Playboy magazine in 1971.
Yep.
Yeah, proving that somebody actually was looking at it for the articles back then, because because this interview, was rediscovered, and his views on civil rights, his views on a lot of that stuff. Nowadays, you look back and go, wow. When Marlon Brando didn't accept his Oscar for The Godfather, he sent a Native American woman up, and supposedly John Wayne had to be restrained from physically attacking her.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not talking about necessarily the best person in the world here. He very, very much sounded like he was very much an asshole, very much a racist.
Yeah, and while John Ford himself was no perfect person, I did learn from that Peter Bogdanovich interview that he was a complicated person, but he had a lot of respect for the Native people, and he tried. And I feel like I remember them saying in that interview that with some of his films, like The Searchers, he tried not like he always portrayed them as the villain, and that was ultimately one of the big problems. But he tried to make their actions feel justified because the white characters in those movies were just as vile.
I mean, here especially, Scar and Ethan are very similar,
mm-hmm.
and you kind of they're both very violent people. So yeah, you do get a sense for that here, and I mean, part of also what was the character's name? Was it Marty or Martin?
Martin, the his nephew.
His nephew Martin, by making him part native, he could kind of be kind of our barometer towards how the racism isn't right. And I mean, not, who knows? I mean, I'm watching this in 2024. I'm not watching this in 1956, so I don't know I don't know the lens that somebody is watching this movie through in 1956. So while we're sitting here talking about how some of this stuff has aged kind of badly in the 70 years since it's come out, for its time, it seems like it would probably be quite progressive.
Yeah, I definitely think it would have been viewed that way. And like I said, it's done with great intention, and I don't imagine he spoke about it too much. But like, I do know for a fact that he had made the last Western John Ford ever made, a movie called Cheyenne Autumn. He made with the explicit intent as a way to apologizing for the way that he treated Native Americans in his films.
Yeah, and I totally buy that, because watching this, it seems like there is a little bit in this movie. There does seem to be this kind of attempt at kind of saying that, look, they are just like us. It does seem like that's in there, although I don't know. I have to watch this movie a couple more times because there might be things I'm missing. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that I finally kicked it off the list, because it's been there for a long time. I've wanted to see it since it popped up on the AFI list, and
yeah, it was one of those films I wanted to see too. Because like, I went through a whole progression with westerns and John Wayne, because when I was a little kid, I didn't like them because I thought they were slow. I thought they were boring, and I didn't think John Wayne was all that interesting when I was a kid. He just kind of felt like a comic book character, but not in a fun way. And then as I got older and I started getting more into westerns, and the Italian westerns kind of helped with that, and then Bud Bedecker, and
they are definitely good starting points, because the Sergio Leone westerns are a good way to bridge the gap.
Yep, and then when you kind of get used to that world, going back to the Ford westerns, or as I said, Bud Bedecker, or some of those other filmmakers, it started to click for me. And funny enough, the movie that made John Wayne click for me was the movie that made John Wayne click for everyone, which was Stagecoach.
Yeah.
I watched that movie just like everyone else did who had seen it when it first came out. I'm like, oh, this guy's something special. And so I've been wanting to see The Searchers for a while. And it's interesting, though, that it didn't seem like Wayne and Ford got along that well.
They had a great working relationship. I don't know, because this is their first movie in a while, because they hadn't made a movie together in a little bit when this was made. And I don't know if they ever made another one again after this. I know.
Oh, continue, please.
Yeah, I know. Apparently, John Wayne said that this was the best movie he's ever made. I believe.
I believe so, and I know
I'm inclined to agree with him.
Yeah, and I know the film, like, there's that famous quote of when John Ford saw Howard Hawks' Red River, and he said about John Wayne, "Oh, I didn't know that dumb son of a bitch could act."
Well, actually, that's the other thing. Speaking of Howard Hawks, speaking of John Wayne's politics, do you know the story of how Rio Bravo came about?
No, please tell me.
Apparently, John, and this this goes back to generations and generations of people who now seem to think that liberal social messaging is a new thing in movies, as if it hasn't existed for 100 years now.
Yeah.
John Wayne had seen High Noon, and he objected to the quote-unquote commie politics of it, and went to Howard Hawks and decided that he wanted basically a shoot-'em-up Western like Rio Bravo, and that was what he wanted in retaliation, because he, for lack of a better word, because it didn't really exist back then, High Noon was too woke for John Wayne. So he wanted Rio Bravo made as like an answer to it. And you know what? In this case, I will say good, because we got two of the greatest Westerns of all time out of that. Because High Noon and Rio Bravo are both fantastic. But,
Yeah. I'd never heard that story before.
apparently John Wayne didn't like the commie politics of High Noon. Which, if you think about High Noon, you can kind of see how he would think of it as commie politics.
Yeah, and then you got someone like Ford, who has it's funny, like you look him up, he has backed both Democrats and Republicans, whereas some of his greatest co-stars were so staunchly Republican. It's interesting that he had such good working relationships with them, because he was quote unquote more progressive than some of the other people. And this turn of John Wayne in this movie, and the story that John Ford's trying to tell, kind of reminds me of Don Siegel. Don Siegel was a very progressive filmmaker, like a very progressive politically person. But when he made Dirty Harry, he knew that he was making kind of a movie about a very vile person, that he was worried that his friends in Hollywood would think that he went to the other side.
Well, I mean, all right, but a vigilante movie is always going to be right-leaning.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
a lot of revenge stories are.
I mean, if anybody's shocked that John Ford would be more progressive, the man directed The Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
Which is a very progressive novel and movie.
Yeah.
So,
and I liked John Wayne and John Ford together. I thought they challenged each other in an interesting way and brought I thought, it's not even just because this movie, I've seen John Wayne in other films, and while he's been good in other films, just what Ford was able to bring out of him, because I also think that Ford helped him shed some of his, I don't want to say ego, but maybe some of his bad habits. I remember there's a famous story of working on Stagecoach. And at the time, Wayne had done a couple films, but hadn't done anything that big.
They were all like B-westerns.
Yeah, and when he got that part, he was coming in, doing his thing, and being, overacting essentially. And pretty much John Ford had to yell at him. It's like, stop everything you're doing. Don't fucking act. Just say the words. Because he's like, when you're trying to act, you're terrible.
Well, Ford always brought the best out of John Wayne.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
At least we could always say that.
But I think with Ford and Wayne, it's slightly different. I think because it was more father-son. I would think, looking back, it's a different generation. Raoul Walsh discovered Wayne, and he put him in The Big Trail as Marion Morrison, I think, and. I think I don't know the story of how he finally got into Stagecoach, but I know he was doing all those B-westerns during the 30s. And as Johnny Ringo, he goes from Johnny Ringo to Ethan Edwards to Frank Weed, to I forget the name of the character, but in Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Now you have a progression. Not only do you have father and son, but you also begin, I think, to see a relationship of these two men in which ultimately somewhere in the middle, and I think it's around the 50s, after Fort Apache, right around, I think it's Searchers, where they kind of blend together to become the same person. And I think the beauty of this whole thing with these two guys is that you have, from the older way of looking back, you start, they're young men, they're full of optimism, and the creation of a world, the first half of the century, the fighting World War II, all of that sort of thing, and then you see them develop and grow into older men, reflective and melancholy.
Yeah, because also, they went on to do The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance after this. So how could I say that?
That's one I have not seen yet.
Okay, well, there's again, a very progressive movie, and yeah, John Wayne. That's definitely another good one that you should definitely check out.
Mm-hmm. It's been one I've been meaning to. The man has made so many films. It's so hard to catch up on his stuff. And
I went on like a Jimmy Stewart kick at some point last year, and I just wanted to see like so many Jimmy Stewart movies, and I there were so many that I hadn't seen. Like I had never seen Harvey, I'd never seen Rope, I'd never seen The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, I'd never seen what else? I went down just the list. I was like, okay, what can I get my hands on? And I decided to go down and see all those. I was like, these are the top movies that he's been in that I've never seen. So I started kind of checking them off because I'm like, Jimmy Stewart's another one that he's like he was Tom Hanks before Tom Hanks. He was.
Oh, that's such a beautiful way to describe it. Holy shit. I never thought about that.
Well, Tom Hanks is now. Jimmy Stewart was, 50, 60 years ago. He was Americana. He was America's, America's dad in a way. He was kind of the guy who stood for what American values were at the time. So yeah, between this, I don't know. I'd have to watch them both again. I definitely want to revisit this. I definitely want to revisit The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. What the hell? Revisit Stagecoach while I'm at it. And I know I got to pull out my Criterion of Stagecoach because there's a second film on there, an early silent film of John Ford's. I got to watch.
Oh, that was The Bandit's Wager. It's actually directed by Ford's brother, Francis Ford. That one's pretty good.
Oh, is that on Stagecoach? I
believe so.
Bucking Broadway or something like that was on.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I do know The Bandit's Wager is on there. So maybe they have two films.
If there is, I didn't notice.
If you've not seen My Darling Clementine, that's a really good one.
I've not seen that one. So you see, this is when I was on the Literary License podcast, the last episode that we recorded last week, I told them I was coming on here. And I told them the gist of the Shame List is you take a movie that, as a film lover, you should have seen by now, and we watch it and we dissect it a little bit. And they asked me what the movie was. I said The Searchers, and everyone responds was, "You haven't seen The Searchers?" So, I was like, and that reason right there is why this is the movie I chose.
And that is why this show came to exist. For that reason right there.
And you know what? Like I tell everybody that, I love the idea of doing a podcast where you're discovering a movie that, is embedded in pop culture, is embedded in our culture. But I never see any shame in, not having seen a movie.
No,
it's like I tell there's a young filmmaker that I know, and I remember talking to her about different things, making references to things, and she'd never get the references, and she'd be like, "I really do need to see these movies," and she was like 18, 19 years old at that point. She was like, "Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm kind of bad at being a filmmaker if I don't know all these movies," and my response is always the same. There's 150 years of movie history out there.
Yeah.
I will go to my grave not having seen all the movies I want to see and all the movies I quote unquote should see. And a lot of us will. Yeah. And hopefully movies stay or cinema just stays on such a path where, like, on my dying day, I will have a regret that I didn't see this movie because there will be so much, like even now, and I've seen probably 10,000 movies, probably more. There's so much I've not scratched the surface on. And Westerns, like you said earlier, Westerns are a huge blind spot for me.
Mm-hmm. I like them way more than I used to, but I've still not seen a lot of the big ones.
Yeah, there's still a lot of Westerns I need to see, and The Searchers was one of them. Growing up in my house, I've seen a lot of spaghetti Westerns. My dad watched those a lot when I was a kid, and obviously from my last name, I grew up in a very Italian household, and my dad, a lot of times, he had VHS tapes that were from Italy and transferred over into NTSC format. So a lot of times I'd be watching like these spaghetti Westerns where people were only speaking Italian.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun hearing them dubbed now. Or you're watching Klaus Kinski, but it's some somebody else's voice speaking in Italian. But then again, they never recorded sound anyway, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
He was always dubbed. But yeah, Westerns have been a huge blind spot for me. So the idea that I could watch a lot of these movies now for the first time, I saw my first Roy Rogers film last year.
What'd you think?
I didn't know that his stuff leaned into comedy as much as it did, or maybe it was just this one movie. But I want, that's the thing. I want to, in a perfect day for me, is I get one feature film in that I've never seen before.
Yeah, that's kind of how I
want to do that.
And I do love to rewatch things, but when there's so much stuff out there to see, it's so hard to.
Yeah,
it's hard to see. It's hard to watch everything.
And I know I never will, but I want to experience this. And the reason I go back to a lot of these older films, somebody that I worked with asked me why I love so many like 1930s movies, and I brought up D.W. Griffith's Abraham Lincoln. Not exactly like a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't feel it was that particularly well made. But the reason that I'm drawn to that stuff is, first off, movies made in a certain time period about things that are going on in that time period is as closest as we're going to get to a time machine.
Yep.
Closer we're ever going to get to time travel. When you watch like a William Wellman movie, that's he made in like 1932, and it's set in 1932 with people having the problems that they had in 1932. You're given a window into something that you're never going to see in real life. I could step out the door right now and know what the outside world is like in 2024.
Yeah.
The only way I'm ever going to know what the world was like in 1932 is to watch a William Wellman movie or to watch, any director. And the thing that draws me about historical pieces that were made back then, like the Abraham Lincoln biopic, is this is made in 1930.
Mm-hmm.
So it is entirely conceivable. People who worked in that production would have been alive in the days of Lincoln.
It's funny you mentioned that, not necessarily of Lincoln, but once again going back to my Darling Clementine, because My Darling Clementine is about the shootout at the OK Corral, and in an interview or something, he talks about the events that happened at the OK Corral, and he goes, "I know what happened at the OK Corral." He's like, Wyatt Earp used to hang out at our sets back in the back when they were shooting silent pictures.
Yeah,
he's like, he's told me what happened.
You remember the gunfight in the OK Corral in Clementine?
Surely.
I'd seen it a couple of times. I mean, the other versions. Mm-hmm. How did you come to stage it the way you did? Had you heard Earp himself tell the story?
Yeah, as I've told you, as we've reminisced about this many times, when Wyatt Earp retired as a lawman, Henry, as you know, he went to some little town north of Pasadena. Now, his wife was a very devout religious woman, and a couple of times a year she'd go to these religious conventions in Utah and eastern Arizona, and Wyatt would get on a streetcar and go up to Universal City and join us. We became quite friendly, and I didn't know anything about the OK Corral at the time, but Harry Carey knew about it, and he asked Wyatt, and Wyatt described the fight fully, exactly the way that you did it. As a matter of fact, he drew it out on paper, a sketch of the entire thing, and Wyatt said I was not a good shot. I had to get close to him there. And that's exactly what you did.
But that's the thing. When you look back at these times now, or the early days, cinema in that way is it's timeless, and it's the best. I feel it's the best tool of learning we can have for what things were like during that time. There's always going to be literature. Also obviously read as much as you can,
Mhm.
But when you look at a movie shot in the silent era, shot in the 30s, shot in the 40s, and they're not, like originally they were monster movies. That's what got me into, the 30s and 40s. But even something like as simple as the Three Stooges,
Yeah.
like you learn something about the time period. Like I went on a Three Stooges kick because I bought the box set that was like $20. It had like all like 190 shorts, and I was going, and as I'm going through them, I'm noticing things that I watched some Thelma Todd and Zazu Pitts and Thelma Todd and Patsy Kelly shorts, and there's always certain things. The tenant in an apartment not being allowed to cook inside the apartment. Wait, why wouldn't you? It's foreign to me that I can't cook for myself in my apartment. But that was apparently a regular occurrence. And then you'd hear Curly, Curly would fall into a bathtub and say, "Hey, it's not even Saturday." Oh, wait, shit. Yeah, people didn't bathe all the time back then.
Yeah.
They didn't bathe every single day.
No, it was something you look forward to. Yeah.
So yeah, you start to kind of get a window into what life was like back then, and it might be something that you don't like. The things we take for granted now, like you watch a movie from the 30s. There's no television anywhere because there was no television.
Yeah.
So it really is like a window into, when it's not something that's like hugely over the top, like like a space creature showing up. But you see, like, when you see a movie from that period about real you watch The Public Enemy, or you watch any movie from that period that is about the problems going on in that time period right now, you're getting a window into something that you're never going to experience in real life. And to me, that's the magic of movies. More than anything else, more than all the ILM digital effects can ever give me. It's you're looking into a world that doesn't exist anymore. So many things have changed. And I think that's the most important thing. That's why I love going back to these movies, because it's just looking at things through a different lens that you never thought of.
No, I think that's kind of a beautiful way to put it.
It really is. And it's the cool thing about having older people on sets now that are going to talk to you about what things were like in the in the 70s and 60s, and eventually they're going to go away, and 50 years from now people our age are going to be the ones that are talking about what things were like in the 2010s and 2020s.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, like I said, I don't really have a follow-up to that. That was beautiful. The only thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, just because I do want to, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, as good as John Wayne is in this movie, this is an ensemble movie to some extent, because there's a lot of other great actors. I just want to talk about Jeffrey Hunter and Vera Miles a little bit. They're, the characters of Martin and Laurie, who I guess in their own way are the subplot of this film. Jeffrey Hunter, an actor that I knew mostly for playing Captain Pike in the Star Trek pilot. Mm-hmm. Fun fact, went to high school at Whitefish Bay here in Wisconsin, which I think is kind of fun. I really loved the character of Martin and his relationship with Laurie, these little things that he's doing throughout this movie. Like some scenes he'll be kind of like he'll try to almost mimic the intensity that Ethan's giving, but then other times be kind of whiny, but not in an annoying way. I love the reoccurring bit of him getting knocked over the like almost like the what is it, like the couch, I guess. Yeah. I love the entire sequence of him and Laurie's fiance Charlie getting ready to have a fist fight with each other.
I love that they played it for laughs.
I know, but also like for laughs, but they weren't making fun of the scene.
No, not at all. And in a way, subplot, yes, but I kind of feel like Martin's the moral center of the movie.
Yeah. He is. And to watch his relationship with Ethan grow, because the movie doesn't really draw a lot of attention to it, but this movie takes place over the span of a good like
a decade
almost a decade. Yeah, because Debbie's fully grown when they find her.
Yeah, Debbie goes from being Lana Wood to Natalie Wood.
Yeah. And they don't really draw attention to the fact that how much time is passing, but the growth that they have, the fact that by the end Ethan wants to give his entire inheritance to Martin, a person he fundamentally did not like at the beginning. But then at the same time, Martin has an influence has an influence on him in that he would have fucking killed Debbie if Martin wasn't there.
Yes. We really never talked about that turn.
No. Let's talk about it before we wrap up.
And it's not even just Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems it's almost, and again, it's, oh man, how do I describe it? It's almost like an honor killing in a way.
Yeah.
Or what he wants to do, because they dehumanize her in such a way.
But do they? Like, she's part of their tribe now.
No, I don't mean the natives. I mean the I mean Ethan and oh God, what's the other God, what is her name again? The love interest of Martin?
Lori,
because even she starts to show kind of hints of like racism at some point. So it's strange that they all they all would seem okay with her being killed towards like the end of the movie.
Yeah, and then there is a theory online that Debbie is Ethan's child. There's a theory because people said if you go back and watch the couple scenes where John Wayne's character interacts with his brother's wife, the way that they interact with each other and have this almost quiet chemistry with each other, and then his complete just desperation to get this child back, but then also the reason why he can't in good consciousness stay, and with it, there's a theory that it might be his child. And thinking about those scenes with that thought process really adds another level to this movie.
I would have to go back and rewatch that because, like I said, this is one of those movies that I am going to have to watch again. I am going to have to watch multiple times because I think it's so layered that I don't think one viewing is gonna do it. But like you said, I already want to watch it again. I just watched it yesterday.
Yeah, same.
Like, this is one of those movies that I feel like I'm going to be going back to a lot just to kind of try to unravel all the layers in it. And for those of you that are a little younger listening to this, and you might be kind of turned off by us talking about some of the overt racism, there is a point to it. And I do really think that the point is because like I said, Ethan is not the good guy. He's not the straight hero of this movie.
No.
And at no point, like you said earlier, at no point are we supposed to bond with this character in that we're supposed to see him as the good guy.
No, every time that we kind of get glimpses of it, he does something to push us away.
Yeah. And I think that movies like this are important because we need to have that dialogue.
Yeah.
We need, and it was needed probably, no, I'm not going to say that because it's stupid to say it was needed more in 1956 than it is in 2024. That's an absolutely dumb statement. I'm not going to say that, but
it was even more shocking then.
It was probably a lot more shocking. Probably a lot more shocking in 1956. But it's definitely a movie that maybe a year, 2 years from now, revisit it and discuss it with someone else that maybe has never seen it and see what I'll definitely look out for the idea that that Debbie might be Ethan's daughter. I definitely got to look out for that next time I watch it. And also, while we're talking, spotlighting some of the characters, Henry Brandon is Scar.
Oh yeah, he's really good in this.
He is. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it was a staple on New York television every year on Thanksgiving. The Laurel and Hardy film March of the Wooden Soldiers would play, and my brother and I did not, back then, because he plays Silas Barnaby, the old rich banker who lives in this town, and he has the mortgage he will forgo the mortgage if the old lady lets her daughter marry him, and all this stuff. And he's under all this old age makeup, and he was like in his 20s back then. So to see him here, not as an old man, but as like a very attractive man who's like in his like early 40s, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say so about that. Yeah.
So yeah, it's so strange to see it, because like I've always thought of him as Barnaby. I always thought of him as the old man, who's kind of hunched over with a cane, who's the richest man in town, and everyone's under his thumb, and just playing this mustache twirling Victorian bad guy. And it's great to see him here as something completely different, and seeing that that was him under just pounds and pounds of old age makeup in 1933.
Yep. Yeah, it's I have seen that film. It's been a while, but I have seen that one. All right. So before I let you go, was there anything else you wanted to add about The Search? I feel like this is a movie that we could probably keep going with, but it's a movie that I will say I really want people to see, because as time goes on, these older films become less and less in vogue. And at the same time, it's also a movie that I feel like a lot of newer audiences will take for granted. I understand that. They've seen these tropes done. They've seen them done very well. They've seen the films that inspired it. But use the context of this episode to put yourself in the mindset of how crazy this of a turn this was for John Wayne, how big of a movie this was.
Yeah. I mean, I think people listening to a podcast like this are going to be the kind of people that are going to be more open to watching this kind of movie.
Yeah.
This isn't a podcast we're discussing, the latest in entertainment news. We're going to deep dive into movies. So
exactly. All right, Joe. Well, thank you very much for coming on, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. Like I said, I've wanted to do your podcast for a while. It's just I finally had to knuckle down and do it. I'm like, let's make something happen.
Yeah.
And obviously, I do want to do more stuff with you. So hopefully, we can find some projects that we can work on together.
I completely agree.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was great to finally scratch this off the to-do list.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to have you on again so we could talk about There Will Be Blood, because that's one I also haven't seen.
Well, yeah, we could do There Will Be Blood.
Exactly. All right, buddy. I really appreciate you coming on. And if you have any social media you want people to follow, let them know now.
You can follow my Substack at joerandazzo.substack.com. I most recently wrote a real deep dive into 1934 film The Black Cat and the 1932 film The Old Dark House. And I did it as one piece because about 15 years ago, my girlfriend at the time, she and I saw both movies in one night at a converted movie palace in New Jersey, or a restored movie palace, not a converted, a restored movie palace in Jersey. So getting some of the photos from that night, and then then rewatching the movies and going into the history of what was going on with those movies, the production behind them, or the search for the Old Dark House after it was lost for 3 or 4 decades. And Curtis Harrington made it his mission in life to find a copy of it. And thankfully he did, because we now have it. thanks to his efforts. But I went really deep into what was going on in the careers of everyone involved, Edgar Ulmer's career from The Black Cat, and how probably his most accomplished film to that date had led to his downfall. So there's a lot going on in it, and a lot behind the scenes. So yeah, I talk about the movies, I talk about the behind the scenes. That's definitely something. I'm also one of the co-hosts of the Literary License podcast, which you can look up on any podcast carrier. We're basically everywhere. Also recently this year, I've been doing the Spoiler Room podcast a lot with Mark Krawczyk. I've become kind of a regular there because he's been doing his pre-code series, and I've been joining him for those.
I love doing his show. I haven't done it much this year, but I love going on his show.
Yeah, we were on one episode together, and was it Sleepaway Camp?
Yes.
Yeah, like 2 years ago.
Yes.
You and I were on Sleepaway Camp together.
Yep.
Yeah. What else? Now I'm one of Joe Bob Briggs's loggers on the Last Drive-In. So, but that's hey, that's definitely a show to watch every other Friday night on Shudder. I guess that's it.
Perfect. Well, everyone who's listening to the show at this point should know how to find me, but I'm Viers102008 on Letterboxd, Michael_Viers on Instagram, and you can find Shameless Picture Show on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks a lot for listening, guys, and tune in next week. I don't know what that episode's going to be yet, but we'll find out soon. Have a good one.
The Shameless Picture Show is recorded in Milwaukee, Wisconsin and Easton, Maryland, and is hosted and produced by Nick Richards and Michael Viers. Today's episode was edited by Michael Viers. Our opening theme music was written especially for us by The Directionals, with narration by Zach McClain. The end credit music you're enjoying at the moment was generously provided by my friends in the band 10 Speed. The Shameless graphic design is masterfully done by Amanda Viers. An extra special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters and to our generous sponsors. We are on Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, Google Play, and Libsyn. You can find links for all these amazing people in the description below.